Okay. All right. Well, good day, everyone, and thank you, Alex, for having me. Welcome, everyone, to getting started with Citrix Web App Firewall. But before, a little bit about me for those of you who don't know me. As you can see, I love the beach. I'm in Tampa, Florida. I am in my second year as a CTA, and I'm a new this year Microsoft MVP, awarded in the RDS category in Enterprise Mobility. I'm also one of the local leaders for the CUGC Tampa Bay area and the CUGC Woman in Technology Mentor, as well as the founder and leader of the USA WVD user group. And since all meetings are virtual now, everyone's invited. We meet monthly. I have worked in end user computing for over 10 years, primarily focused on Citrix, lots of NetScaler ADC, still working in that new name. And in recent years, cloud solutions in Citrix Cloud and Microsoft Azure. I currently work for Presidio as a senior engineer doing delivery of both Citrix and WVD solutions. So why use Citrix Web App Firewall, also commonly called WAF? Well, it's highly ranked. As a matter of fact, in 2017, NSS Labs ranked Citrix Web App Firewall as #1. The slide you see shows the use cases highlighted on Citrix's website for defeating XML-based threats and PCI DDoS, but I have seen many other use cases like hospitals or college campuses as good examples. To answer the question, what is WAF? We need to start with the 7 layers of the OSI model, not to be confused with my 7 layers of pancakes. This is more like it. The OSI the 7 layers of the OSI model. So starting at the bottom, you have layer 1, or the physical layer. To the right, I gave an example of each layer. So I'm not going to go through all of it. The key thing is traditional firewalls typically protected layer 3, layer 4 for your network and transport layer. What makes Web App Firewall so cool is it's a layer 7 firewall. So that's up here, the application layer. So in this example, the HTTP or HTTPS layer protection. And that's where most attacks happen, at that layer, application layer. But wait, there is more. Another cool feature of WAF, it offers a hybrid model, allowing for both positive and negative, or blacklisting and whitelisting. So what do I mean by that? Well, a positive security model is where everything is blocked and assumed bad, and rules are put in place to allow. The negative security model is based on the premise of protection from known attacks. So if you think about antivirus software, when you get your updates, you get periodic updates that you have to update the software, and those are the known viruses. It's similar to the ADC with negative security model. So more to come on how ADC does it later. Don't think I need to say anything here. To use WAF, You will need Premium, formerly Platinum Edition, or there is an optional module that you can purchase with the Advanced Edition. There is also, interestingly, a standalone appliance, and I didn't know this until I started researching. If you don't have an ADC, you can purchase just a web app firewall appliance, and it can be upgraded via software license to be a full Citrix ADC or NetScaler. So if I want to verify my license before I get started, in the GUI, after I log on, I'm going to go into System, License, and here I can see there's a green check mark next to the Citrix Web App Firewall. So I have it, I'm ready to go. WAF is also available in the cloud. There are two options for cloud-based Citrix Web App Firewall in the AWS marketplace, as well as in Citrix Cloud, you have the Citrix Web App Firewall service. So enabling the feature is easily found in the basic features in version 12, and you can enable it via CLI. All the screens I'm demonstrating today are based on version 12. I used the GUI for presentation purposes. However, you can use the CLI for all of this as well. And also to note that 13 had some slight changes. From where 13, this checkbox for basic features was actually moved to the advanced features. And there's also some additional features in 13. So before we can configure, I want to let you know, this is when you enable WAF rules, you are changing the application traffic for all of the ADC. So this CTX article, CTX 131488, has all the details. It's a pretty huge article, and we don't have time today to cover all those items, but I highly recommend you read that before you set up WAF. We could probably spend another session on that article by itself. So let's look at WAF's engine settings. Since we know that we're changing everything, we need to kind of pay attention to this. These settings affect all policies and profiles and all requests and response by WAF. So to get here, I expanded security, Citrix Web App Firewall, and under settings, I can access this change engine settings. To maintain the session state, WAF generates a cookie. The cookie name Citrix_NS_ID and cookie post encrypt prefix ENC that's highlighted, they are the default names for the app firewall session cookies. So I haven't made any changes on this screen. This is absolutely the default. They're well documented as such, but you can change them. And while the cookie is not passed to the back end, I will always change these settings because I don't want a hacker knowing that an ADC is in the path of the web server. So another item to consider changing is the CEF logging. CEF, or Common Event Format, is an open log management standard. WAF by default uses the Citrix native ADC log format. A couple of reasons you would want to enable CEF logging. If you need to use geolocation logging, it's required to enable CEF logging for it to work. The second reason you may want to use CEF login is if your enterprise needs to collect and analyze logs in other tools such as Splunk, you will need the common event format. So here on this slide, I wanted to show you a sample with the native versus the CEF log. As you can see, the CEF log on the right, it looks more human readable, at least in my opinion. Below, I gave you the format of what it looks like to equal, but clearly seems more readable to me. So we're still on the settings page here. A word about the Reset Learn Data button. The learned data is stored in a SQLite database in /var/learned_data and has a limit of 20 megs. Yep, I said 20 megs. There are no alerts if this gets filled up, and learning will stop. So it's probably not a bad idea to reset before starting. When you reset, the learned data, it doesn't affect the rules you've already put in place or accepted on learned data or relaxation rules. So there's no harm, just go ahead and hit the button, reset before you start. And so before we get to configuring, a note about signatures. This is the part that I talked about earlier with a negative security model. So it needs that periodic update, just like the antivirus definitions. The default signatures get updated with firmware, or you can update the signatures by downloading from the Amazon website URL that you see on the screen. You can also sign up for alerts on Citrix.com, and I recommend this. I think hopefully everyone's getting alerts by now for CVEs and other updates. You can do the same thing with the signatures. And if you don't have internet connectivity on your ADC, you do also have the ability to just download them and move them over to get them installed. The signatures can be updated pretty often. I've seen it sometimes twice a month or monthly, at least this year. It's been often. And so I have a demo to show you how easy it is to update the signatures. So I can access the signatures under the security section. And here I will select the default signature and I'll go to the auto update settings and I'll click the check URL to confirm my ADC has internet access. Since I have internet access, I went ahead and checked the auto update box, and I don't want to wait for the updates. They take every hour, so I went ahead and updated it by hitting the update button. When I refresh the screen, you can see that the version is now update, and that's how easy it is. I didn't fast forward this or anything. So now on to configuration. Firstly, we must understand what we're trying to protect. So let's say I'm tasked to set up WAF on a load balancing vServer for an in-house developed web server. The developer that created the app no longer works at the company. So I have limited details. No matter what the case, I need to test. And it's always recommended to test rules before enabling. Luckily, WAF has the ability to enable in learning mode. So I'll take the lowest risk path by cloning the production vServer to a test vServer. That way, I can enable learning on the test vServer and test rules before putting into production. So I need to create a policy and a profile, but all the rules will be blocked and learning will be enabled. Then I need to create, I need to bind that policy to that test vServer. So setting up the clone is the recommended method. However, sometimes you have hundreds of vServers and clones may not be possible. I actually had this happen to me a couple of times. In that case, you can set up learning in the same way, but be mindful that there are risks involved. So I have a demo for us to walk through the wizard. So let's get started here. So under security, I'll set up under the section the wizard, and I'm going to give it a meaningful name. And I'm going to select the radio button Web 2.0, and I'll explain more on that choice later. I remove the true statement because I want to control the traffic, and I'll show you why after the demo. I'm going to make it easy for myself, and I'm going to use the expression editor to set up the expression to filter out the traffic to the destination IP address of my test vServer. So now I'll go through the wizard, and here I'm going to make sure that blocking is disabled for all the items listed here. I have the option under the select actions to go ahead and do remove all blocks, and that will take care of all of the items at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and set up to log all and also stats all, and then learning all. And learning is the key here too. So once I click finish, that's it. It's set up, right? So notice during the wizard, there was no prompt to bind the policy. If you remember, I talked about binding earlier. When we use the wizard to set up WAF, the policy automatically binds to default global. This would invoke the policy for all traffic on all interfaces on the ADC. Now you can see why I entered the expression to filter out the destination IP. If I had left it as true, it would have enabled learning for all of the vServers, including the production vServers. Well, that would have been a huge mistake. So let's do this manually. So let's set up WAF manually so we can understand it a little bit better. So the first step is to create a profile. So again, I'm going to give it a meaningful name. And remember that radio button choice of Web 2.0. So we have only one choice here because it's a radio button. And choice 1 is specific for web applications that are HTML, which just protects HTML web pages. And XML application does XML and SOAP. And a Web 2.0 protects a combination. So I'm not a developer, I can't explain all of this really well. But as you can see, the Web 2.0 does the entire combination of all three with the rest added. If you remember from my story earlier, the web developer no longer works at the company, and I don't have any details about the custom developed web servers. So when in doubt, just choose Web 2.0 and you're covered. So after I create the profile, I have to go back in and select the profile and hit edit so I can get to this screen. And here I can hit the plus on security checks on the right. And now I can continue on where this looks a little bit familiar like the wizard. Here I can deselect or uncheck all of the blocked checkboxes and select or check mark all of the learn checkboxes. And I'll select the logs and stat boxes so that they're all check marked as well. So it doesn't have the all option like in the wizard, so you actually have to go through and manually do step each one. So in the essence of time, in the magic of webinar, I did it in advance, and so we're all ready to log stats and learn and no blocking. So when I click OK here, it's a little bit clunky. You have to do save and close and then done. There's a couple clicks. So now that we have our profile created, next we need to create the policy. So we're going to go in, give it a meaningful name, and then select the profile we just created in step 1. So you'll notice here I entered an expression of true. But when I use the wizard, I set up the expression to filter out the destination IP address to the specific test vServer. I used the filter in the wizard to separate the traffic because I knew that the policy was going to be bounded globally. When I use a manual setup, I may want to reuse this policy for another vServer for testing in the future. So I'm just going to set it to true. And basically, I just want to demonstrate that you have options on how you can set up the traffic to separate. You also can do some things with the expressions to equal the URL name, and in addition to what I showed you with the destination IP for the vServer. So now that I have the policy created, the third step is to bind that policy to the virtual server to make it work. So go under Policy Manager, and here I can select the policy and then choose to bind it to the load balancing virtual server, and click continue on that page. I can then hit bind, and it's that simple. Notice that the bind point now says load balancing virtual server where it was global before. So the fourth step is to create a custom error page. And you may be wondering, well, this is not really necessary for setting up WAF, but you want to do this because your users have to test. Somebody needs to test that this works. And when they test and they get an error, they don't always know that they get an error. So what you're going to do is set up a custom error page so it gives them some meaningful information where you can then use that to troubleshoot. Now, to get there, I have to go under security and under imports, which seems a little strange. So I'll click on the add button, and in this case, it's select a text, and then I'll hit continue. And I got this HTML code from a Citrix document, so don't be alarmed. It looks like a lot if you don't know HTML. It was just purely a copy paste and gave it a name. And now that I have that created, I have to go back in and edit the profile that I set up earlier. And this time I'll select the profile settings. And then I can select under the settings section the radio button for HTML error output and then select that custom error page that we just created in step 4. So now that I have my rules in place, I want to see what happens. So if I go under auditing, I'm going to show you the demo of it. So we'll go under the auditing and syslog messages, and I'm going to filter out by module, in this case, the app firewall module, so I can make this a little bit easier to read because there's a lot of data in syslog. And as you can see, there is several entries that are clearly stating not blocked. Another nice feature here is that I can deploy the rules from the syslog to save myself from creating the rules manually by just hitting deploy all. And so this is, I had one already, that's why I got a red X there. But it was that simple. So let me now show you. Whoops. I want to show you here that we need to go back into the learning profile and look at what we just did. So we hit deploy all, and if I come under the learned rules, I'm going to choose a start URL because that's the one I had for sure. You can see that these are all the rules that got enabled when I hit the deploy all. And if you scroll all the way over to the right, you can see that they were deployed from the syslog viewer. So I saved myself a lot of work by having to actually manually enter all those items, right? Mhm. So I have one more demo here for us. So in this demo, I'm going to turn on blocking. But before I do that, first, let's just go to the web page with nothing enabled so that you can see what the home page looks like. So I'm just in my HTML5 browser. I enter the URL, and remember that you see this red WebGoat page here. And now I'm just going to go back into security and profiles, and I need to go ahead and enable it. So in order to do that, I'm going to enable, go under the security checks, select my start URL, and then I'm going to check mark block. And that will enable the blocking feature for me. So now that I have blocked on, here's the OK, and then I have to do save and close and done. Remember I said it was a little clunky. So now we'll go back to the same HTML browser and do the same URL, and notice I have a different page. It's not the red page that I got. So something happened, right? It got blocked. But if I'm a user, I don't know that that was the page that I wasn't supposed to get. So here I'm going back in, and I'm actually going to set up the custom error page that we created earlier. And now that I have that enabled, we'll go back to the same HTML page, and here you can see that the page got blocked. And I have information here that I can hand out and pass on to the service desk or whoever's troubleshooting to make sure that they know where it came from. And that page is obviously customizable for your help desk's phone number or email address if you wanted to do that. And